if they want to follow.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to do that in my intro. Okay.
Mhm.
I make it 6 o'clock, so we're going to have to start because, like I said, time is of the essence, and it's crucial that we, listen to Eric, who's going to start us off tonight as one of our candidates, because he has another appointment. And so we need to make sure we capitalize on all of his golden time here. I just want to say that the questions that people have sent in are in the chat, and I'm hoping to get a few more questions in from the floor if it's within the 15 minutes. So thank you to everybody who sent questions, and thank you for being here. And thank you to the candidates, because they have a very busy schedule and they're always on the run. So I do appreciate that they're here for, I don't know whether it's 70 or 62, take your pick. At the moment, it's both. So we're District 70/62, and Michelle will be talking about redistricting later. But I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Lynn here as one of the three of the candidates who's going to be speaking tonight and addressing our meeting. So Eric, I'm going to go straight to you now. Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Great. Hi, Jalen. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. Happy to join your group and to see you again.
Thank you. Right, so what I want to do is give you 2 to 3 minutes, just introducing yourself, Eric, a little bit about yourself, a bit about your campaign, and then I'll ask you some questions, and then we'll ask other people to ask you questions if we've got time, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Good to see many longtime friends here on the call. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Eric Lynn. I'm a native here of St. Petersburg, a proud graduate of St. Petersburg High School, and I spent my career working on federal policy, both in the United States Congress as a legislative director, where I was honored to write a range of legislation to include on environmental protection, as well as equality and reproductive rights. And I am now also proud to have worked for President Barack Obama for 8 years. Running now for this seat, Florida 13th District, the open congressional seat that Charlie Crist is vacating as he decided to run for governor. And we must do everything we can to keep this seat blue and to keep this seat Democratic. As you know, Republicans, both in Washington and in Tallahassee, are trying to pass legislation and laws and policies that are not looking out for everyday people with everyday problems. And what I want to focus on are what I call my 4 E's of policy. I only have 2 minutes to open here, so I won't go in too far in depth, and I hope we'll have a chance to answer questions about them later. But I will tell you that the 4 E's for policy that I would like to fight for, make sure that I'm standing up for you in Congress, are an economy that works for everyone. I was proud to fight for $15 an hour back in 2015 when we were considered radical liberals who supported a $15 hour minimum wage. I'm glad that Florida passed an amendment on it, but unfortunately it's not being implemented fast enough, certainly not in Florida, and definitely not in the rest of the country that does not have that. I also fight for the 2nd E, which is protecting our environment, where I was proud to write legislation such as the Everglades Restoration Act when I was working in the United States Congress as a legislative director. And I believe we need more federal legislation like that to protect our environment and protect our waterways and wildlife, and I hope to get into that further here in this conversation. The 3rd E is equality and equity. We need to fight for gender equality. A woman's still paid less than a man is for the same job. We need to fight for reproductive rights. A woman's health decision should be made between her and her doctor. And we need to fight for LGBTQ plus equality. I was proud to help lead ending the Don't Ask, Don't Tell discriminatory policy in our military when I worked as a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense under President Obama. And we also need to fight for equality and equity in our Black and brown communities that unfortunately continue to be treated in a racist and discriminatory way, as we've seen with voter suppression bills, as well as other legislation, because we need equity across the board and justice. That includes environmental justice, voting justice, and health justice. And finally, the last E is education. I'm proud to be a graduate of public schools here in St. Petersburg. I'm proud to send my kids to the public schools here in St. Petersburg and Pinellas County. But unfortunately, Florida is 47th in spending on education per pupil. That is wrong. It's something we need to fix. It's something we can fix at the federal level, and I hope to fight for you doing so in Congress. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. I'm looking forward to the questions that you would ask. and always happy to see so many proud Democrats and making sure that we are fighting hard and everyone is not only getting out to vote, but working hard to make sure we sign up new voters and bring as many voters as we can to the polls to elect Democrats here in Pinellas County in 2022. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Hi, well, great. Thank you very much, Eric. You did address quite a lot there already. Some of the questions you touched on, but anyway, let me just launch into and combine in the first and the second one, which is, why do you want to be in Congress and what makes you the best candidate to represent Pinellas County people and District 13 in Congress?
Sure, both great questions, and I'll try to answer them both together and quickly so that we can get to others. First, what motivated me to run for Congress, I think was your first question. And I can tell you that when I worked as a legislative director in Congress in between 2000 and 2004, I was evacuated out of the United States Capitol on September 11, 2001. And I followed an evacuation plan with members of Congress and other staff members like myself to make sure that we could get out of the Capitol to safety when our country was being attacked by foreign terrorists. When I watched let me just take a pause for a minute to say that I'm thankful to those brave men and women who put that plane down in Pennsylvania on 9/11, because as the 9/11 report has shown, that fourth plane was headed for the U.S. Capitol where I was working that morning, and unfortunately likely would have hit before the evacuation plan was put into place. So I owe my life and a debt of gratitude to those folks. But when I watched on January 6th of last year, the same evacuation plan out of the U.S. Capitol being used by the same congressional members and their staffs, and not because of foreign terrorists attacking our country, but because of U.S. citizens attacking the United States Capitol at what they thought were the orders and the behest of the former defeated President Donald Trump. I was sickened, I was angered, I was frustrated, and I knew that I had to do everything that I could in order to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again. And that is why I am running for Congress, to fight for our democracy, to fight for our voting rights, to fight against that violent ambition that unfortunately that former defeated president and his supporters had, and to make sure that we are solving problems for everyday people here, because putting food on the table, unfortunately, is still a problem. Being paid equal amounts is still a problem. That's why we need to fight to make that minimum wage pushed forward. But now you asked, why am I the best candidate in order to keep this seat blue, in order to win this congressional seat, and to best represent this county and this district in Washington? And the answer that I would give you is because I'm a native of this community. Not only am I born, raised, went to school, and lived here out of the time that I worked for President Obama, but I also send my kids to the public schools here. We live every day and see the problems that are here in Pinellas County and across our community. But my experience is the experience as the only candidate in this race who spent my career on solving federal policy problems. Starting when I was legislative director in Congress, as I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to write legislation on a range of issues, but I'm most proud of environmental protection legislation that I had the chance to work on, one of which many people have heard of, which is the Everglades Restoration Act, where I was part of a team where we helped to draft that act to protect our waterways, our wildlife, and our environment in South Florida. And we need more environmental protection legislation like that here around the rest of Florida, because the governor and the rest of the states have, and the rest of the state government have not acted on that to protect our environment enough. But I'm also proud of the experience that I had working in the executive branch. Working for President Barack Obama for 8 years was truly the honor of my lifetime. But what it allowed me to do was gain policy experience and effective change policy experience in the executive agency level. In Washington, for a member of Congress, once bills are passed, the only way that they get acted on is they must be executed by those executive branch agencies. And I'm proud to have worked with them, to have relationships in them, and to know how to get things done once a piece of legislation is passed. I'm the only candidate in this race that has that federal experience, both legislatively as well as in the executive branch. And I will just close with this. The work that I was proud to do for Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta as his senior advisor at the Pentagon, and the continued work that I was able to do with the United States military and work here in Tampa at MacDill Air Force Base with Central Command and Special Operations Command as an outside advisor means that I have relationships and experience on the national security and military side of things. I'm the only candidate that has that in this race. Why is that important? Because we must keep this seat Democratic. We must win this seat by building a coalition of not just Democratic voters, where I'm going to continue to fight for my Democratic policies that you and I believe in, but also because we need to fight to get those independent voters. And a large percentage of those NPAs, as we call them here in Florida, non-party affiliates or independent voters, are military families and are veterans and their families. And they want to know the candidate they're voting for has experience working on national security issues, has experience working on the military, and has experience working on foreign policy issues. And that is what makes me the only candidate in this race who can combine federal legislative policy experience, federal executive policy experience, with military national security experience, and being a native of St. Petersburg, as someone who's sending his children to the public schools that we need to work on fixing through funding from federal legislation. I hope that was a short enough answer to your question, Joan.
Yeah, great. Well, we're kind of running out of time, but I did want to ask one of the, because you've addressed environmental issues already,
Please.
so I'm going to leave that one alone. What about if you could sponsor one bill that became law, what would it be? Just one bill. I know that's a tough one, but what would it be?
Well, here's the thing. I have a number of policy ideas that I want to work on and draft legislation right when, hopefully with your help, I get to Congress and become the representative of this community. And one of them is on the environment. I have a legislative idea which will roll out later this week that actually will prevent another Piney Point disaster spill here in Florida. And we need ideas like that. So that would be legislative ideas that I would want to write and draft myself. But if you're giving me one bill that you said could become law and I get to play, of course, this doesn't work this way in a legislative government that has to be passed bicamerally and with the support of the president. But if I could pick one, I would pick voting rights legislation. And I would absolutely pick the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to pass, not one that I would be drafting, obviously, because many smart people have already drafted, to include the late Congressman John Lewis, who I was honored to know and call a friend, work with when I was in Washington and working as a legislative director. And he is one of the people who both inspired and encouraged me to run for Congress. But we need to fight for voting rights. We need to ensure that we are passing federal voting rights legislation that will supersede the horrible voter suppression laws that are racist, that were intended to suppress the votes of Black and brown people here in Florida. We've seen it in Georgia and around the rest of the country. Because most important in our democracy is that every single vote counts. And not just because we believe in democracy, as we all do, and that every single vote must be counted, but because if you don't pass voting rights legislation to protect our right to vote, to ensure these voter suppression laws around the country are not superseded by federal law, which is what I want to do, then you can't pass any other laws. You can't protect reproductive rights. You can't protect women's health. You can't pass other equality and equity environmental protection laws because you haven't got people's right to vote covered, and therefore the legislative branch and eventually potentially the president is not representative of the people because the voting rights were taken away, and it doesn't stay a true democracy that our country is and must remain forever.
Indeed. Thank you. And I'm going to override on the question 5, and I'm going to take it to the floor. Has anyone got a question that Eric can address now? If not, I'll go to question 5, but I do want someone to ask a question if there's a burning desire.
Please.
No? All right, then I'm going to go to question 5 quick because we haven't got lots of time. So if the Democratic Party loses control of either the House or Senate in 22, how should that change the legislative strategy?
Well, first, I have to say that I don't like and disagree with the premise of the question, because I believe that we are going to keep the majorities in both the House and the Senate with the help of people on this call and active Democrats around Pinellas County and around the state of Florida and around the country. So first, we're going to fight hard to make sure that we can keep the Democratic seats that we have, and we can pick up some seats as well and defend. And there's a way that we are able to do that by protecting those voting rights we were talking about before, but by also registering voters and getting out to make sure that we are contacting voters and those that are not always active in the process to bring them in to make sure that we win and keep these seats Democratic, particularly the one here in Pinellas County, and of course our Senate seat that we need to win, defeating Marco Rubio and of course defeating Ron DeSantis. However, your question that you're asking, a hypothetical that I don't like and I don't think will happen, but I'll answer out of respect for you, Joan, and your group. If we were to be in the minority as Democratic members of Congress or having a minority Democratic Senate, I believe that what we would need to do is continue to stand up for our principles and what we believe in and continue to fight for the policies that we want to see enacted. But to take that small percentage of policies that we believe in, that we can work across the aisle on, to be able to work with those Republicans and get things passed that are going to help everyday people. The examples that I come up with and I think of, look, we have an example of what President Biden did by passing a bipartisan infrastructure bill to help fix our roads and our bridges and to help fix the internet in rural areas around our country that Republicans and Democrats support. That is a good example of things that we can continue to work on and continue to push for, because we certainly need more help on those types of things right here in Pinellas County as well. But also we must think about what else we agree on. Well, we could not get the Build Back Better bill passed. That was President Biden's overarching bill of policies that he wanted. There are pieces of that we could, and I want to fight for the whole thing. But if in your scenario, we are the Democratic minority, there are elements of it that I know we could work together with Republicans on. The best example that I would give you on is childcare and family leave. Okay, right now, and we're coming out of a pandemic where child care coverage from the government is one of the most important things that we could fight for, to ensure that parents know that they can go back to work, that they have responsible people that are caring for their children, just like we have now. But unfortunately, it's so expensive for families that are continuing to make the same wage, because we know, of course, the wealthier wages are going up, but the essential workers' wages that we always spoke about during the pandemic continue to stay the same as they are, unfortunately. And childcare continues to go up in its costs as well. Something that we can work with the Republicans on across the aisle to ensure there is money for childcare. Second, I mentioned family leave. It is an abomination that we are a first world country and the only first world nation that does not offer maternity leave and paternity leave to our employees here in the United States at a paid level. Okay, when we are telling people, yes, you had a child, you can take 3 weeks off and not get paid, don't you feel that you are getting your due? The answer is no. That is wrong. It is inappropriate. It's something that we need to fight for. And it has bipartisan support in the Congress. So that is a second idea of things that we can work on across the aisle to build those bridges, both metaphorically and physically, to be able to pass legislation that there is agreement on if we were to be in a Democratic minority. But I just want to close with this, and I apologize that I do have to jump off in a minute for another event. Even if we are in the minority, that does not mean that we give up on our principles. I will continue to fight and stand up every day for those same issues that I talked about, protecting equality, protecting women's health, reproductive health, fighting for LGBTQ+ rights, and fighting against racism and voter suppression laws, and standing up for what we believe in, an economy that works for everyone. Those are things that you continue to fight for, even if there is a slight Republican majority in your hypothetical question that I disagree with, Joan, and we're going to fight every day to make sure it doesn't happen. But I hope that was an okay answer for you.
That was great. Thank you so much, Eric, for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that it's hectic on the road there, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm sure everyone appreciates the opportunity to hear all of your views, because they're all going to be voting for one of you. So thank you very much.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I just ask everyone on the call to please go to ericlynnforcongress.com. You'll be able to look at our policies, our background. You'll be able to sign up as a volunteer and help us keep this seat Democratic. And of course, to be able to make a contribution if you're so inclined. Every $5 helps us make sure we beat our Trump endorsed opponents. Thanks very much, Joan. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Joan.
I'm so glad that you came and joined us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us to share all your ideas. I was going to give you like 2 to 3 minutes of a basic introduction about yourself and your campaign, and then I'll ask you a few questions. And if we've got time, we'll open it up for other questions. Okay.
Well,
Eric had about 18 minutes, so I'm going to give you 18. So take it away.
well, thank you, and thank you to all of you for being engaged and in this fight. I'm joining you tonight from Tallahassee. I'm glad our schedule worked out that I could make it onto this Zoom. And I'm so privileged to have been in the fight for all of you for the past 6 years as a member of the Florida House Democratic Caucus. I'm so proud of the fact that all of you are in this fight with us in what are certainly difficult times for Democrats in Florida, but the only way we are going to make progress is by doing the type of work that you all are doing in organizing, in canvassing, in being engaged in changing this state. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ben Diamond, born and raised in Pinellas County. And from an early age, I was inspired to be involved in public service. My dad, who's passed away, was a longtime pediatrician here in Pinellas County, who was always volunteering, served on our juvenile welfare board. My mom was a teacher who went back to law school, who's now my law partner, and she is always volunteering, whether it's for All Children's Hospital or 8 million other things in our community. And my granddad, Donnie Fussell, represented Florida in Congress. He had a long tenure as a member from Miami-Dade and the Florida Keys. He was a Democrat. He served for almost 38 years in the United States House of Representatives. And even though I grew up in Pinellas, we were always going down to Miami for his various campaign events. And I just remember he had a big picnic every Labor Day. The Labor Day picnic, where he and my grandmother literally handed out Publix fried chicken to everybody in Miami-Dade County at this huge park. And he wore an apron that said, "It is a pleasure serving you." And he really did love the service and the work. And it was a different time, obviously. It was a time when our politics worked, when we were willing to do what was best for America, regardless of the party we serve. We always put our constituents first and our country first. And that's basically been the approach I've taken. I won a seat to the Florida House in 2016, which was a difficult year for us, obviously, because it was a year that Donald Trump was elected president. It was a year that Donald Trump won Pinellas County. I won a swing seat that year by a significant margin by going and just working hard and knocking on doors and telling voters and talking to voters and listening to voters about their concerns and letting them know that I'm going to keep listening and I'm going to keep walking and I'm going to keep trying to do right by the people in this county. And I've now been through that hard election fight and two re-election campaigns where the Republican Party of Florida spent significant resources to try to beat me. And, and now we are in this campaign for Congress, and Lord knows we are going to need a lot of help to fix what's broken in this country and to fix what's broken in our politics. And that's only going to happen if we are certain that we send somebody up to Washington to represent our county that actually shares our values, that is actually going to do right by the people of this county. And certainly, we can't send somebody up there that is going to be a part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz caucus. And I have a track record of beating those types of extremist candidates and winning in these tough elections. And I'm ready for the fight and happy to discuss whatever issues are on your minds tonight. So thank you, Joan.
Okay, so I'm going to field a few questions here. So the first, I'm going to combine 1 and 2, which is why do you want to be in Congress, and what makes you the best candidate to represent Pinellas County people and the people in District 13?
Well, I think first of all, I mean, we need to send a representative to Congress that's actually going to um, do right by our community, but also be effective. I mean, I think that what I'm increasingly hearing from voters as I door knock every weekend is that they want somebody that will start getting things done, and will find a way to break through this sort of partisan noise that we're in, and who's not afraid to stand up for what's right. And I will just say, as humbly as I can, that is the track record I've brought in the 6 years of my service thus far to this county in the legislature, which, by the way, has not been easy service. Okay. I have managed to find ways in a very difficult time up here to pass legislation year after year in a bipartisan way on issues for our veterans, for our seniors, to protect child safety, and to bring home resources for our district, and to be reminding people that representative democracy can work. It can be effective if we elect honest people with integrity that are willing to do the work. At the same time, I have been absolutely unafraid to stand up as part of our democratic leadership here to the ridiculous efforts and the dangerous efforts to interfere with our right to vote, to interfere with women's right to choose, to hurt marginalized communities, to pick on the most vulnerable. I mean, I think that I bring an approach of being unafraid to stand up to a bully, but also being able to work to restore the type of government that I think our country and our community needs. And that's what I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do as our representative in Washington.
Indeed. Yes. Okay. Because April has an environmental focus, what one issue related to the environment that you have championed while in government, and why is it so important that you did that?
Thank you for that question. Well, for those of you that know me, that that those are issues that speak to me and are very, very important to me. I mean, I started working on environmental issues as soon as I finished law school. I volunteered as a pro bono lawyer to draft an amendment to our state constitution in 2014, be part of the legal team that worked on this amendment, the Land and Water Conservation Amendment. I think these are generational issues about protecting our water, protecting our natural resources, protecting the things that make Florida special. And since I've been here in Tallahassee, what I have focused on, I've served on the Environment Committee my full time in office. What I've been most focused on is how do we make progress in protecting Florida on the issues relating to climate change. I've filed a bill every session or 3 sessions in a row to try to establish statewide resilience policy, because we all know hurricanes are becoming more intense. Flooding in our neighborhoods is becoming more severe, and the warming climate is going to have a dramatic impact on this state for our kids and our grandkids. And I have tried very hard to take that issue out of this partisan space and to try to find ways to build support for the fact that we have to be doing things differently in Florida if we are going to protect the things that make living here so special. And anyway, so I would say climate change and preparing Florida, preparing our country for the impacts of climate change, and taking advantage of the opportunities. We live in the Sunshine State. We should be a national leader on solar and renewable energy. We should be incentivizing that, because those are great jobs. I was just talking the other day with some folks that work in the industry, and you wouldn't believe how much people get paid working on some of those projects. I mean, those are good salary jobs, and they're good for our environment. They're good for our economy. They lower the cost of energy for our homes and businesses. And of course, here in Tallahassee, we've hit major roadblocks because the state politics is controlled by the big utilities. But in Washington right now, under the leadership of President Biden and the Democrats in Congress, we have totally done a 180 on where we were under the Trump years in establishing national and international leadership on issues relating to climate. And that has to continue. Those are issues that I have a record of championing, and I want to continue to work on in Congress.
Thank you. Okay, and question 4 was if you could sponsor only one bill that would become law, your choice, what would it be?
I just thought this was such an interesting question. And whoever in the district came up with this question, kudos to you. I don't know if that was you, Joan, but you know, as I've thought about this, since you emailed us the questions, the number of calls I have gotten from people and the number of conversations I've had in St. Pete since our regular session ended and I got home after Florida passed this abortion ban has been really moving and upsetting to me. You know, the number of families that have had and women that have had difficulties with their pregnancy after 15 weeks. And I'm very concerned about what may be about to happen in the United States Supreme Court. You know, it's been recognized as a protected federal constitution right for over 50 years in this country, that these are very private decisions for women to make about whether to terminate a pregnancy. And so I guess, you know, when I think about some of the stories I've heard in the past couple of weeks, I'd be interested if I could wave my magic wand and I were in Congress. And as you know, as has been said previously, you know, it doesn't work that way. The way you get things done is by building consensus. But I would codify in federal law the Roe versus Wade decision. I think it's incredibly important that we protect women's privacy rights in this area, and I'm very concerned about what's about to happen potentially with the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm extremely upset about what the Florida legislature and Ron DeSantis just did here, and you know, and the disparate impact that's going to have for families across America. I mean, it's going to have a real, unfortunately, a real impact for women for a generation. And I think it's going to have a disparate impact on certain women who don't have the resources, who don't have the types of advantages that others do. And I'd like to see that change.
Good, thank you. And I'm going to move into question 5. I don't see Michelle on the call yet, so I'm just checking. So I think we've got more time unless she comes. If the Democratic Party loses control of either the House or Senate in 22, how should that change their legislative strategy?
Well, it shouldn't change it one bit. And the reason why I say that is because I've spent 6 years now up here fighting in the minority party. And people say to me, Ben, why do you do that? I mean, what a waste of time. But it's not a waste of time because we are fighting for our values. And we are fighting, you know, when we fight hard for our values as Democrats, we win. And I think whether we are in the minority or whether we are in the majority, you know, we are standing up in front of our desks with our microphone for working people, for seniors, for our environment, for social justice, for fundamental freedoms. And, you know, I don't think that changes, you know, it obviously we can't change the vote count sometimes, but we can still bring our core democratic principles to the fight. And I truly believe, particularly given the challenges we're having economically and the struggles that American families are facing, that we are on the right side of history on these issues in trying to help people, in trying to provide young families with childcare, and trying to provide meaningful opportunities for people to better themselves and better their families' financial situations. I do think we have to do a better job, candidly, of communicating what we are fighting for and how it matters and how it helps people, and I think when you get into strategy about whether you're in the majority or the minority, a lot of that strategy comes around communication and making sure our voters hear, regardless of their political party, what we are standing up for, because Lord knows there's a tremendous um, disinformation campaign right now in politics, and politics is a brass knuckle fight. And you got people out there just totally distorting what we stand for, and trying to scare people about what we stand for. And, we have to be very, very clear and outspoken about our values and what we're fighting for.
Mm, absolutely. Somebody who's out, campaigning, doing voting registration, I think that's really crucial about how we crystallize what you're actually doing, up there, we need to be better at
Yeah.
it. Absolutely. Okay, well, that was our question 5, but I don't want to let you go unless Michele is here, because our time is up. I went fast, Ben. It always flies when you're, enjoying
Well,
yourself.
I just want to
right?
say, in closing that, I think Michelle's getting on now. Rep Rayner, I see her here. I just so appreciate your continued engagement and your efforts to stay involved in this fight. And thank you, Joan, for your leadership, and thank you all for the opportunity to be with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Hi, Michele. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Good to see y'all.
I'm glad you could make it. I'm so excited. Okay, so this is Michele, and she's our third candidate, and I think it's about 18 minutes. It doesn't really matter because you're going to go into redistricting afterwards, Michele, and thank you for doing that, because that was your original thing from Christian. But anyway, it all changed. So here we are. And I'm going to give you 2 to 3 minutes to introduce yourself so that people know who you are, a little bit about your campaign, and then I'm going to field some questions to you. Okay.
Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. Hello, District 70 Dems. My name is Representative Michele Rayner. Many of you know me because I am your state representative in the Florida House. And so I am running for Congress. As many of you know, I'm running for Congress because I believe that we're in a moment that calls for strong leadership, but we're in a moment that calls for people-centered leadership. Many of you know my history as a civil rights attorney, working with Ben Crump. I was a public defender before that. And in this particular primary race, I'm the only woman, the only person of color, and the only LGBTQ person. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I think that, my lived experience really informs the way that I think about policy, informs the way that I think about making sure that policy is inclusive. And that's what I've done in the State House when we've worked on issues such as workforce and food deserts. But I also say that because I've been told by establishment Democrats to stay in my place and to wait my turn. And I will tell you that we're not in a moment that we can stay in our place with that coded language or wait our turn. We're in a moment that our democracy is really fragile. And so I know that a lot of folks talk about the importance of keeping this seat blue. But for me, the importance is not only keeping this seat blue, but giving people something to vote for, an ideal. Because guess what? I believe that we can have a state, we can have a district, and we can have a country that is better than where we are now. And that's why I'm running. I will tell you, many of you know that I'm married to Bianca Goolsby, and this is a sacrifice for us. You know, I am a trial attorney. I'm not working right now, so I don't have independent wealth. And so for us to be able to sacrifice our family and sacrifice some of the comforts that we have, it's because we truly believe in what this country can be, what this state can be, and most certainly our district. So that's a little bit about me. Joan, I will answer any questions that you have. I know you got some strong questions for me, and so I will answer any of them that you have for me. And it's so good to see so many friends on here too, people I know that were so super supportive in my first race. So it's so good to see y'all on here.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so I'm going to combine the first and second together. So why do you want to be in Congress, and what makes you the best candidate to represent Pinellas County people and the people in District 13?
So I will tell you, let me start with the second question and work backwards to forward. So we know that the governor has proposed a map, that the map is going to pass and will be signed into law, and it will be litigated. And of the primary candidates, I'm the only one that lives in District 13. I live in the newly drawn District 13, and I think it's really important that if you're going to run for a seat, that you ought to live in the district in which the people you are seeking to represent live. I think that and so for me, not only have I live in this seat, I grew up in Clearwater, and Clearwater is still in District 13. So for me, I think that it's really important to have someone that is actually rooted in that district, that lives in that district, and that has served the district, not only in the State House, but also hopefully in Congress. And I think I touched a little bit on this, Joan, about why I want to run for Congress. You know, for me, this is not about, you know, any entitlement to a seat or having the most cash on hand and all of those things. What this is for me, it's about, we say this on my campaign, we say understanding the assignment. And I think that our campaign, we understand the assignment very clearly, that this is a campaign that is focused on the people. This is a campaign to build collective political power. This is a campaign that is bringing back the basics of centering people-powered politics. And so for me, many of y'all know what we've done in the district of showing up for folks, but you also know what we have done, you know, in legislation. And so for me, this is about understanding what's at stake, understanding that we have children who no longer feel safe in school because of how their families may identify or how they may identify. We have women and people who don't feel like they can make choices for their own bodies. And while we're seeing this in our state, my mother often tells a story to me of when she was in the civil rights movement and when she integrated the University of South Florida. And she often talked about how it was the federal government that had to step in when the states chose not to codify civil rights. And I think that we're very much in that moment. And she and I were talking the other day, and she said, you know, Michelle, I'm 77 years old. I have less time now than I did before. And I will tell you that it feels almost as bad, or if not worse, than what I walked through. And for a 77-year-old Black woman from the South to share that sentiment, that's saying something. And so for me, this is not about ego or any of those things. It's about, we're meeting a moment. And just like we met the moment in 2020, we're meeting the moment now. And that's why I'm running for Congress. And that's why I believe I will be the best person to represent folks in Congress. And I will tell you, lastly, I think that because of how this district is drawn, it's very clear that I'm the only one that can be Anna Paulina Luna. It's very clear that I am the only one that will be able to persuade MPAs to vote Democratic. I'm very clear that I'm the only one that would be able to persuade low propensity Democratic voters to come out. And we're seeing that at the doors. We're seeing people who said, listen, I don't really vote, but I'm going to vote for you, because it's not about me. It's about voting for this collective ideal that I think it's so important that we have and that we talk about. And so I'm ready to go head to head with Anna Paulina Luna. I'm not afraid of her. And I know that a people powered message will keep this seat blue.
Great. Thank you for your passion. Okay. April is kind of the environmental focus. So what one issue in the environment have you championed while in government, and why is it so important?
So I've really worked on issues of environmental justice. I will tell you, one of the day after I got I won my primary election, I was called about the factory that sits right next to the elementary school in Childs Park, and about the smoke that is billowing there, and how there are children that aren't able to actually go out a lot of times during recess because the smoke is so noxious. And so I, as a representative elect, called the people that I knew to call. I was an aide before, so I kind of knew some of the folks. And I got, everyone was doing this. Well, it's the state. No, it's the county. No, it's the federal. And so I've been working with stakeholders in Childs Park to come up with ideas. Also working with them to canvass neighbors to talk with them about what has been happening in Childs Park with that. But also the Piney Point disaster was in my district. I share a district with Will Robinson, so the Piney Point area was in my area. So not only did we work on town halls I worked on town halls along with Commissioner Freed. I also was a part of the delegation that was able to get almost $100 million from American Rescue Funds down to deal with Piney Point, and also talking through with other stakeholders and other folks in our community about what we could do, also not to prevent this from happening throughout the state, but also how is this not only impacting the beaches, but when we're thinking about inland, when we're thinking about folks that live inland, that's where we see the impact. We know that there's going to be impact on the beaches, but I feel like what's missing from that conversation is the people that live inland, the people that live in District 70, my district, where, how are they going to be impacted? And so I'm committed to still having those ongoing conversations. And I think when you think about the environment, it's not something that's siloed. It's an issue that is connected to education. It's an issue that's connected to food insecurity. It's an issue that's connected to housing and all of these things. So I tend to really look at these issues as intersectional issues and not just siloed issues.
Thank you. Okay. If you could sponsor only one bill, that could become law and you can decide on that, what would it be?
Wow, Joan, this is not fair. This is
I know it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Wow. I mean, it is hard because I tend to be a policy wonk. So I think I'm all of these things. I mean, I know we have the usual suspects: voting, abortion. I would actually do work around either environmental justice in conjunction with food insecurity. I think that is a real issue that we're having. I think that, obviously would most certainly, support a bill that codifies Roe, support a bill that deals with, affordable housing. But I think that most certainly I talked about issue that is a byproduct of that is food insecurity. And that's something I've worked on in the state and have gotten legislation passed with that. And I think that it's something that First Lady Michelle Obama is very passionate about, and that I would actually take up that charge to really deal with an issue, legislation regarding food insecurity as it impacts everyone. And it's also an intersectional issue with affordable housing and attainable housing.
Interesting. Thank you. Okay, and last but not least, if the Democratic Party loses control of either the House or the Senate in 22, how should that change the legislative strategy?
Well, I'm hopeful that they won't lose, but I think that if that should happen, which would be highly unfortunate, I think that it kind of mirrors what we've been doing in the state legislature as the party of opposition. I think it's that time. And also this happens to be, for me, kind of the work that I've done as not only a lawyer, but also an organizer. You've got to take the message to the people, right? You got to take the message to the people. And so I think, one, there's a part of being being the party of opposition, right? Because we know if the Republicans should take power back, they're not going to try to work with us. They're not going to try to do anything. They're going to ram their harmful agenda down our throats. So one is speaking truth to power and not being comfortable and not just sitting back, but using whatever platforms that you have to raise the alarm, to sound the alarm. But then I believe deeply in my spirit and deeply in my soul, because this is the work that I've done, you take it to the people. You let the people know. We come on Zooms like this. We go door to door. And this is the stuff that I was doing as an elected and what I've been doing now as I'm running for Congress, talking to people about what's happening. Because what I think the Republican Party is really focused on is making sure that people are kept in the dark about what's happening, making sure that they don't know what's happening, making sure that if you are too distracted with all of these other things, you won't see the sinister plot that they have. And that really is what it is. I called Ron DeSantis a thug today. I said, this is just thuggery that he's doing. And so I think that for me, the strategy is, and this is how I've ran this campaign, the last campaign, and how I've done work in the community, is making it people-centered. And when we're building that collective political power, which is what I'm trying to do, building that power, that I may be the one that's in Congress, but y'all are the ones that are empowered to make the change.
Great, thank you. And I did say before you started that I didn't know whether you were there, but you were in the waiting room. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad.
Yes, I was.
That's my error. Okay, so we're going to segue right into, because thank you very much, Michele, for all of that. But we're going to move into, because if people already know, I'm sure that, you know, District 70 is becoming 62, and there is a link in the chat about, you know, trying to find out what your new district is going to be. But Michele is going to just elaborate a little bit on that and explain a little bit by, you know, I know that you can't really address the US part of the House maps, but you can talk about the Florida state, about the redistricting and how that's going to impact our elections. Can you do that, Michele? Thank you.
Sure. And so obviously we know that how District 70 is configured now, it's very much gerrymandered, and it is all of pretty much all of South St. Petersburg up to Gulfport. So kind of that line, then going down to a little bit of Manatee, Sarasota, and then just like 4 precincts in Ruskin, in Hillsborough County, which is in Ruskin. So now what we're seeing with District 62 is that Manatee and Sarasota will be in another district. I think it probably maybe in the new 70, and a couple, and then kind of split up in between other districts. And that this district kind of really, in some ways, it mirrors Senator Rousson's Senate district. And so what you see is that it is going to not only be in South St. Petersburg, but then it's going to hop the Bay and go over into Hillsborough County. And so let me kind of share what this means to you. There's 3 folks that are running, Wingate Newton, Trevor Mallory, and a young man from Hillsborough, Jesse Philippe. And so there's been conversations of, well, we, you know, on the Hillsborough side, we put someone else in there, they're going to be able to, you know, represent, you know, Hillsborough and kind of the configuration. And so I will tell you, you know, as someone who has driven 4 counties to represent folks in this district, I like the fact that it is more compact. I still have a problem that it is still hopping the Bay, because Hillsborough and Pinellas are 2 different counties. Tampa and St. Petersburg are 2 very different cities. And that's some of the argument that we're seeing in the congressional maps. And so for me, I think the onus would be on folks, y'all who would be in the new 62, is to really start organizing, letting people know that the district numbers have changed, and then also letting folks know that kind of what that means for their voting, right? Where their precincts may change, because we know that once qualifying, all of this happens, the supervisor of elections has a certain amount of time to give people their new precincts and all of those kinds of things. And so I think that that's kind of where we're at. I mean, Joan, I'll take some questions for you when, if you guys have like specific questions, but that's kind of where we're at.
No, well, I'm going to open that up to anybody who would like to ask Michelle a question. Julia.
Thank you.
Wanna press- There
Yes,
you go.
I do. I do. Hold on one second. How you doing? Thanks for letting me
Julia.
ask questions. Okay, so regarding the redistricting, can you help me understand something that's probably a little obvious, but is apparently confusing to some people? For the redistricting, I've read that the new maps are active for your campaign purposes only. Now, that doesn't mean that currently elected leaders are going to be removed from their seats. Like, you're going to stay representing District 70 until the election, right?
Correct. So this is where it's kind of like a little wonky. So
Yeah.
I am currently a sitting representative in District 70. Rep Diamond is currently a sitting representative in District 68. Currently, that's where we're at.
Okay.
However, if I was rerunning for my House seat, I am a sitting representative in 70 running for State House District 62. So right now, those who are running for old 70, now 62, they're running for 62. I'm still, so when we're up here in special session, I am the representative from the 70th district. So it will, until qualifying and those things, that's when you'll see the numbers change. That's when you'll see people like drop out. And then until November, the general election, I am still the representative for District 70. I know it's very hard, but what I would tell y'all is that as you are preparing for the election, it's like you're going to do a little bit of work, double work, because you're still active in 70, but then you also have to prepare for 62, where those new lines and borders are, if that makes sense.
That it's been a little confusing. I've heard some different things about it. I had thought that 70 would still be active until the transition and that there's no reason to remove people from their offices. So thanks for that clarification.
And I have nothing to do with removing folks from offices. That's an internal conversation. But yes, I think that you kind of want to kind of still operate because you are going to be kind of doing a little bit of both, it feels like.
That was a good question, Jules. Any other questions for Michelle? That was a great explanation, Michelle. I got to say thank you, big time. Thank you. Ray, Kwesi.
Yeah, I had a question. So if the maps are challenged in the courts and it's taken up, will the maps still be used for this upcoming election, or will there be
Correct.
other maps?
So the state house maps and the state senate maps, they're done. Like, it is what it is. The congressional maps, I will tell you, it will be challenged. However, as we have seen, the litigation is going to keep continuing. So the maps that we have now will be the maps that we run on in the new election. So when I talk about the new 13 and saying that I actually live in the new 13, that map is the map that I intend to run on, because that's the map that's going to be there, unless something happens where a judge could possibly issue an injunctive relief. But I will tell you why I think this is problematic. And this is me getting very wonky and getting very lawyerly on you. What the issue becomes is that in this congressional map bill, the language says that venue can only be, well, no, that's actually going to be an amendment. So that only a Florida judge can actually deal with this issue, right? So meaning that they're trying to preclude it to go to federal court, which is problematic on so many levels. But then there's an amendment that is coming that will only have venue to be appropriate in Leon County. And so for those of you who don't know what venue is where you try the case. Venue is where the case is tried, who has jurisdiction. So the problem with that is if the issue of these congressional maps are, let's just say District 13, St. Petersburg, and I'm aggrieved and I have an issue, I should be able to file that in court in Pinellas County. But now they want to change it to make sure that it goes to Leon County. So the governor and his ilk will have control over how this goes. And that will be an amendment that we will probably see tomorrow coming over in messages, because I know that that is an amendment that the Senate took up. So once again, this is a process that the governor is rigging. He's a thug, and this is what he's doing in order to lay the foundation for him to say, look what I've done. Look, I'm the leader of the party. I've done the most for the Republicans. So I will tell you, I am not hopeful that we have a judge that I believe would follow the law and as regards to VRA and also the fair districts. But so these are the maps. And I think that the sooner we kind of get okay with that, the sooner we can kind of move on and do what we need to do.
Great.
And it's a shame. This is why elections have consequences. This is why elections matter. I mean, I had a conversation with Andrew Gillum, who is still a good friend of mine. I said, Andrew, and I'm going to be very transparent. I said, you could have done anything with everybody in the whole world. And guess what? You would still be a better governor than the one we have now.
It's it's too much. Hey, Michelle, it's 7 o'clock on the button, and
Yes.
I usually try and keep it within the hour so that people will come back next time. But I have to say thank you to everybody who came tonight. I do appreciate it, because it was very important to hear the candidates, speaking from the heart, because we're voting for one of these people. And I think it's really important to hear what, their passions. So, Michelle, thank you so much, darling, not only for, coming and doing your candidate bit, but for adding on about the redistricting, which is very complicated and very difficult for a lot of people, maybe not politically active people, but, it's complicated, Anyway, so thank you so much for coming and shedding some light, and I'd love to have you back again, but I'll speak to you again. And everybody else, are there any burning issues that people need to say or ask or do before I close the meeting? I'm sorry, Steve, I can't let you on because it's too late, but we'll definitely get to you next month. Is that okay?
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got anything? No? Okay. I'm just trying to stick to the hour. I do appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
A luta continua.